You found the skeleton. How would you tell it to die? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, hello everybody. I am here with Hovind and also with Maddie from Science Side Up. So go subscribe to Maddie. Any of my mods, please put her link in the chat because she just got in here last minute, so her link isn't in the description right now. So, yep. Right now we are going to be looking at hopefully finishing up Kent Hovind's CSE 101 Part 10. Which I think is the last part before we get to CSE 102. However, that's not what we're moving right on to, because Ken Hovind recently released all of his quote-unquote Bootcamp, Creationist Bootcamp videos. So we're going to take a dive into that. And Maddie is here because she is mentioned by name in the first video, and somehow Matt Powell is the first person to know, Maddie included, that she is now a PhD scientist.
Yeah, I don't know where he gets PhDs to hand out, but apparently he gave me one.
Well, congratulations. So, I'm
that's
very
cool, I guess.
Very happy for you.
I guess I can quit school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, no need for school anymore.
Matt Powell says so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you might want to teach, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess that's still school. But anyway, well, I mean, Matt Powell is he's a bit free with the appellation of doctor. Because if we remember, he's also the only person I know of that thinks that Raw Matt should be called Dr. Raw Matt.
Dr. Raw Matt. First name Raw.
Yes.
Last name Matt.
Exactly. I actually wouldn't be super shocked if at some point he changed his name to that. Like, that was the name that ended up on his license.
Oh no.
Oh, drink for Mothra. Alright, so that brings us to the drinking rules. So, Kent with Bent does have a drinking game. We do not encourage you to play. In fact, we accept absolutely no responsibility or liability or anything like that for any injury to self or others, or destruction of property, or any crimes that you may or may not commit while under the influence of alcohol as a result of the Kent with Bent drinking game. So, please drink responsibly if you choose to play along with an alcoholic beverage. You may also choose to play along with a non-alcoholic beverage, which is a pretty common option for us. And also, we have now gotten over to the point where I have two people with cameras. So while I describe the drinking rules, I'm going to try and set up the set. So this is going to be a little bit messy, because someone didn't get here until like 2 minutes before we went live.
My bad.
It's
but
okay.
I have my Jack and Coke.
That is nice. I do appreciate that. So, alright, I gotta switch the, no, that's the wrong thing. I gotta switch over the, scene, so give me a second. That. Okay, so, the, rules for, the drinking game are as follows. So, we drink whenever Kent Hovind says something that's just a little bit too stupid, and we just kind of have to. We drink whenever Kent Hovind gets something right, and it's not just a quotation from someone else, so he has to actually get it right on his own. Right? And let's see. We also drink whenever Kent Hovind tells a story that didn't happen. So whenever his shower thoughts become his memories, we take a drink, because that happens a lot, where Kent Hovind's shower thoughts are just suddenly memories.
Oh no.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah. He's like, I was in a debate this one time with an evolutionist, and you listen to the story and you're like, no, that's just a conversation you had with a hypothetical evolutionist in the shower. So, yeah. Let's see.
I was on a plane flight too.
Yes.
Or almost always.
So we take drinks when we hear Mothra or Godzilla, or also when we get super chats that contain one of my Mothra or Godzilla emojis. Because members can send super chats with my special stickers. I have 9 special stickers. If I get 3 more members, guys, I can add a 10th special sticker. So, hey guys, if you want a 10th sticker... Well, actually, I guess for those of you who haven't joined, if you want up to 10 stickers, 3 of you should join. That's how that works. All right. So without much further ado, oh, we also drink for failed jokes. So if Ken Hovind tells a joke and it fails, we get rid of it. There we go. I think that is about it. And here we go.
Plans to. Why doesn't the animal world develop these feelings of pity and emotions like that?
All right, so we're just talking about the fact that lions don't tend to feel pity for the zebras and whatnot that they kill, which I'd say is probably fair. But the thing is that animals do feel pity and empathy and things like that, or at least they act like they do, right? Especially mammals. Mammals have a lot of social interactions where they take care of each other. They notice when another one is feeling... Oh, drink from Mothra. When they notice that things aren't going well, or someone's injured or something, many times animals will go over and comfort each other. So, yeah, that's a real thing that actually happens. So it's just fake to say this. Go ahead, Maddie.
And you do see that even with like species, like, okay, humans are super good, like empathizing with things that aren't humans.
Yeah.
Right? Like we project a lot of emotions, say our pets. But other animals do that too, right? Like every heartwarming story about like, oh, this dog adopted these kittens, right? Like, so humans aren't even the only ones that do that across species.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's really an odd claim, and the thing is, I can understand why predators might exclude prey from their, empathy, because it would be pretty hard to be a predator if you were always paralyzed by empathy for your prey. Like,
I mean, I don't have a lot of empathy for like hamburger.
No, I had a hamburger today, and I didn't feel very bad about putting that on the what did I use? I cooked it on a cast iron pan. Yeah. Very, very low levels of sympathy there. And the thing is, if you ask me, like, hey, should we use humane slaughter methods and whatnot for cattle? Yes.
Yeah.
But, like, sorry. Vishanti, it's possible you might be able to join sometime. It's essentially almost random when and if I have people on and who they are, so I can't make any promises to anyone in particular. But Maddie is on because our next video is actually something that she's brought up. She's name dropped. Which, by the way, if we don't get to that, Maddie, you're welcome back on for the next Count with Bent, which will be week after next, because next week is Eric with Erica.
Right. I'm about to leave town, but I can't remember when or when I'll be back. So
Well, we'll see what happens.
If evolution is true, I mean, if evolution is really true, then no humans should be alive today that have feelings of love and justice and mercy and pity.
But why?
That's crazy. So the thing is, all these things are what's called pro-social behaviors, right? And they're called that because they increase the survivability of the social network that you're part of. And the thing is, by relying on each other, you're more likely to survive occasional lean times and less likely to just, have the abundance of a boom time not really matter as much. So because you can do things like share resources, or if you have a bad day of hunting or gathering or whatever it is, your companions can help share resources with you. If you're sick, they can bring you food. All of these are things that increase the survivability of the group as a whole. And so any social animal in which there's intergroup care, especially in animals as good at doing things like that as apes, right? Because let's be honest, it's hard for a cow to bring a sick cow extra food. What is it going to do? Carry it in its mouth and then drop it in front of the sick cow? Like, that's going to take forever. The cow's going to need to eat during that time. But apes can gather things like food and stuff like that in their hands. They can physically carry other members of the group if they have to, or at least help them hobble along, things like that, right? So these pro-social behaviors are encouraged by evolution, whereas antisocial behaviors, such as being randomly aggressive or hoarding food in a way that other people notice and, things like that. These are things that will likely get you expelled from the group and thereby have less chance to reproduce. So evolution heavily favors pro-social behavior in social animals. in solitary animals, like say a Komodo dragon, they do not care about each other unless it's time to mate, and then they only care about each other for one reason. And
Sexy time?
yeah, exactly. And that's it. And then they leave. And that's because they're not social animals. There's no benefit for them feeling these pro-social behaviors. In fact, there is a benefit in them having antisocial behaviors because it benefits that one lizard. Because that one lizard can get along pretty well on its own. So it should be taking in as much food, fighting for territory, not caring if other lizards, which are just competition, are being injured. So yeah, pro-social behaviors heavily selected for in social mammals. Weird, right?
That is evolution, right?
Yeah.
You're describing.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like selection pressure for pro-social behavior is real.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
I know. Who'd have thunk it?
Not Uncle Kent in a relation.
True.
He doesn't get it.
They shouldn't have survived. That should have been weeded out a long time ago. So this verse
Why?
about being made in the image of
I mean, it wouldn't have been. We just went over why.
God, I think it's
No, we
talking
want
about
to
it.
why not. I want Kent to say why.
He
But
might.
He doesn't give an argument. He's already moved on.
Yeah, it's true. He's already moved on to the Imago Dei.
Moral likeness. There's whole sermons, there's whole books just on this, what does this verse mean about the image of God. But here, the Bible teaches we're made in God's image, and the textbooks teach the kids, this is Grandpa. Right? How many of you learned about cavemen when you were in school, about us coming from an ape-like creature of some kind?
I mean, when I was in school, I think the word caveman had mostly fallen out of use. Manny, what about you? Was the word caveman still in common use when you were in school?
No, I mean only in like cartoons.
Okay.
Like caveman wasn't something that was like in a textbook because that's also like that term shouldn't show up in a textbook because what does it mean?
Right.
And
the thing is,
it's a colloquial term, not a scientific.
Kent is kind of right. It seems like the only thing you can really say that it absolutely means is people living in caves. And like that doesn't mean much because that's still a thing. There are still people who live in caves.
Right.
Caves are actually a nice place to live because they tend to maintain a fairly constant temperature versus the outside. So if you can find a cave that has a comfortable temperature, whether it's the middle of the summer or the middle of winter, that cave is still likely to be pretty comfortable. And it shelters you.
You have to be careful about lighting a fire.
Yes.
If it doesn't have good airflow, you'll accidentally suffocate.
Well, actually, I think even in places where people are still using caves for shelter, usually the fires go near the entrance for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
So, yep.
What about these cavemen? The kids are taught this in school. They're taught we came from an ape-like ancestor. Is it possible?
Actually, I would say that humans evolved from an ancestor that was an ape. I'm actually not a big fan of the whole, humans aren't apes or they don't share, or their ancestors wasn't an ape. Because look, if orangutans are apes, and gorillas are apes, and chimpanzees are apes, then the common ancestor of chimpanzees and gorillas was an ape, and the common ancestor of chimpanzees and humans was an ape. So, it was an ape. And I know that the argument is supposed to be, we didn't evolve from any modern apes. Well, okay, but that ancestor was itself an ape, because it was a member of Hominidae. So,
I think that's something that's kind of, that's a detail that I think is often lost on like the general public of, no, we did not evolve from a chimpanzee. Both us and chimpanzees evolved from an ape
right.
that is now extinct, right? Like,
or is it extinct since it has living descendants?
Ooh.
That's actually an interesting philosophical argument. It's like, what does it mean to be extinct? Because if you have living descendants, there was never an extinction event. Because the lineage still exists, so... But I don't think this is the time... This is probably not the time to hash that out.
And that's also not what Kent's talking about, right? Like,
that's way more nuanced than Kent is ever going to get to.
Right. We're not even to the like he doesn't get to the interesting, nuanced discussions, places where like the three of us are going to really enjoy a conversation.
Right, about actual interesting topics. He's just going to be dumb, and you can still see it on screen where he has a base pair on DNA circled and labeled gene. That's the level that Kent is at, where he doesn't know what a gene is.
But he did teach about it for 15 years.
I know. 15 years of high school biology teaching.
Okay.
I have a real question, though.
Okay.
Because he taught in Christian schools. So here's an important thing I'm not sure you knew. Even accredited, so not all private schools are accredited, right? Even if it is accredited, private schools are not required for their teachers, for all of their teachers to be accredited.
That's true.
So I wonder, like, it's all well and good to say I taught high school science for 15 years, but there's an assumption in there that is I was an accredited teacher, right? And I do wonder if he was accredited, or like,
no, he wasn't.
Because if you're not, then you have to have a degree in a relevant field, right? You can get, let's see, like I could get, I have a degree in math. So in Oklahoma, I could get an emergency teaching certificate that would let me teach without a teaching degree in, say, math. I could probably justify certain subjects, but I don't think I could be accredited to teach English, right, without like getting another degree.
Right. Well, the reason I know he wasn't accredited is because he has no degrees from any accredited institute whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
A couple of his claimed PhDs, because now he's claiming to have like 5 of them, were given by himself to himself.
Cool. That's not how that works.
No, it's not how any of this works.
I'm pretty sure it does work that way, Dr. Dapper Dino.
Oh, that's a good point.
A degree from Hovind University.
I did receive a doctor's degree in, what was it? Dinosaurs? I think it was just dinosaurs from Hovind University. It's in some video. I don't remember.
I have a degree. Can I have a PhD in being dapper?
Ooh, well, you have to take it up with the board at Hovind University.
Okay.
Maybe.
For an ape to turn to a human. Somebody sent me that email, and I just couldn't resist throwing that in there.
I mean, it works way better with Ken Ham, but okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk just briefly about the caveman. There's so much more that needs to go into this topic. I mean, their whole course is going to be taught just on this. We'll take a little quick trip down Evolution's Hall of Shame.
Oh no, the Hall of Shame.
Nebraska man is a good place to start. You know, all they really found for a Nebraska man was 1 tooth.
Hey, that's correct. Take a drink. It was a molar.
A guy named Harold Cook in Sioux County, Nebraska, which borders Colorado, he found a tooth. That was it.
Yep.
1 tooth. He said it looked to him like it was halfway between the shape of a human tooth and an ape's tooth.
I mean, human teeth. So it was a molar. And an interesting thing about molars is that molars are actually a synapomorphy for homininidae. And I'm going to break down what those crazy words mean, because not everyone is an evolutionary biologist. So a synapomorphy...
Such as me.
Right. So a synapomorphy is a apomorphy that is shared across a taxon. An apomorphy is derived character. So
thank you.
Yes. So when in the course of evolution, a lineage develops a character, a new character, that is an apomorphy. When that is shared across a taxon, it's syn, so to get syn for together, and then apomorphy, synapomorphy. It helps define an entire clade. And one of the synapomorphies for homininidae, which is the great apes, including humans, is that they have tricuspid molars, which means you have 3 little bumps or cusps on your molars.
Is it weird that I immediately went to like run my tongue on my molar to feel the 3 bumps?
No, I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the chat did that too, and I think Hovind did too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Turns out I do. On my molars, I have 3.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Because you're an ape. If you weren't an ape, you would have a different arrangement of molars. So the thing is that it's actually pretty hard to say that something is halfway between ape and halfway between human, since human molars are part of the diagnostic criteria that make humans apes in the first place. Humans have 8 molars. In fact, they have very, very specifically 8 molars. So let's keep going with this.
So therefore, it proves it came from an animal that was halfway between a human and an ape. This is the line of logic they use now, okay? They built the entire skeleton for the museum around this 1 tooth.
Okay, we're going to take a drink. There was never a museum built. There was that one guy who had a few reconstructions, like, in his house that he would show reporters. That's it. There wasn't a museum.
They said, well, if the tooth is shaped like this, the jaw must be shaped like this. And if the jaw's like that, that would fit a head like this. And if the head like that, then it'd fit the body like...
Nope, that never happened. The closest thing that happened was a few people made, either on commission from the guy, the discoverer, or just on their own to be put in newspapers, some reconstructions of a hominin that they just basically made up. There was never a formal reconstruction project by any scientists. In fact, Nebraska man was generally dismissed by the scientific community because at the time we were already finding hominin fossils in Africa, and so the idea that there was a hominin just hanging out in Nebraska made very little sense to anyone. And of course, the find of 1 molar is insufficient for the scientific community to declare that you actually have found what you think you have, unless it's very specific, right? Like, so you can tell that, like, I don't know, you found like a troodon tooth. Okay, they're extremely distinctive, and if you find an entire tooth, there had to have been a troodon somewhere around there, I guess. But like, if you find like a dolphin tooth, that means almost nothing because they're just cones of tooth. They're very indistinct. So
They built the entire thing from 1 tooth. Then they made the guy a wife. You got to...
okay, so I'm just gonna take a drink because this is stupid. When you say Nebraska man, you're not using man in the sense of it was a guy. Not even the original discoverer was claiming this individual was male. Because, spoiler alerts, a single molar is insufficient for you to determine the sex of an animal.
What?
Nebraska man refers to a supposed population of man in the sense of humankind, right? So, you gotta remember that in English, the word man derives from the Old English man, M-A-N-N, and it just means human, right? So if you wanted to refer to a male human, you added the word male, which in Old English was wer, so you add werman. Or if you wanted to speak about a female human, you added the word for female, or with, so you say withman. And then withman eventually evolved into woman, and werman eventually at some point dropped the wer, and we just now then use the word man to both mean human, but also specifically male humans when the context warrants it. So for instance, when you hear things like mankind, that word doesn't refer to just the men in the sense of the males of the species. It refers to the whole species of humanity. Similarly, Nebraska man doesn't refer to the fact that this specimen would have had a penis in real life. It refers to the species as a whole, even though that species didn't exist. So they didn't make a wife, they reconstructed 2 members of a species, one being female, because if it had been a real species, being an ape, it probably needed 2 sexes to successfully reproduce in the long run. At all, because, yeah, apes are part of that male-female sexual thing going on. Yeah.
I have 2 thoughts. One, this is Illustrated London News, circa 1922.
Not a peer-reviewed
like
journal.
The most scientific of scientific journals,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a newspaper, team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. Also from 1922.
Well,
So-
that's around the era of when Nebraska man was found. And the reason you don't have anything more modern is because there is nothing. Because no one ever took this find seriously, and then it was debunked completely. I mean, it's a complete non-issue.
My other thought is, one, I feel like we need the term wereman to be brought back into vogue, but also potentially is that a wolf that turns into a man for one night a month?
Well, the thing is, werewolf, that actually already means a man in the sense of a
like
male
man-wolf?
who turns into a wolf, right? So the idea is there's some dude who's turning into a wolf. That's why it's a combination of the male human bit and the wolf bit.
So girls can't be werewolves. That's what I heard.
Etymologically speaking, yeah, it does actually seem to follow. And also, in stories about werewolves, you actually don't get a whole lot of sense that there's women becoming werewolves in, like, historical werewolf accounts. So
what I just heard is that I'm immune to werewolf bites, and I'm gonna go with
possibly, yeah. Yeah. Of course,
Yeah.
it could also just be that there are no werewolves and you're immune by virtue of it not existing.
I don't know.
Either way, you're pretty safe. Well, not from being
Yeah.
killed by a
Yeah,
werewolf,
yeah.
though. You could still be killed by one.
I guess that's true.
So, yeah.
Really be good to know what his wife looks like from the shape of his tooth. But they had him on display. London Illustrated London.
They had them on display in the newspaper. This isn't exactly a museum exhibit. Taking a
This
drink
one
for that.
illustration.
I also love that this is also a period of time when like the illustrations in newspapers were almost all hand drawn, right? So like, you know, it's just yeah. Okay.
News,
Let's keep going.
1922.
Okay.
Nebraska man. Proof for evolution.
No, it was never really proof for evolution. It was a thing that was weird because it didn't fit into evolution, which is one of the reasons people were suspicious.
During the Scopes monkey trial in 1925 in Dayton, Tennessee, they were going to bring in a bunch of witnesses as to give proof for evolution. It turned out the judge said, it doesn't matter what evidence you have for evolution, this is not what's on trial. The only question is, did the teacher break the law?
Which is accurate. The law wasn't about whether or not evolution was true. The law said you couldn't teach it, regardless of its truth. So truth wasn't a defense. This wasn't like a slander case where truth is an absolute defense. The law said you can't say this, regardless of truth. It didn't actually say regardless of truth. It just didn't have anything about in there saying unless it's true. It just said you couldn't say this. Did the teacher say it? Turns out the answer was yes. He was fined, and then a group of wealthy individuals pooled some money together to pay off his fine because it was a show trial in the first place. In fact, it wasn't even clear that he actually had said or taught those things because he was just willing to go on the stand and say that he had. So he might have actually falsely confessed to a crime just to get a show trial. Because the thing is, he knew that the only penalty was a fine, and this was supposed to be a show trial, so a number of wealthy people who were interested in challenging this law decided to come in and say, hey, would you say on the stand that you taught evolution so we can have a test case for this? And he was like, well, I don't want to pay the fine. And they're like, don't worry, we'll do it for you. So, okay. And he said, yeah, sure. Which is actually one of the things about laws, at least in the United States, and also generally in Commonwealth countries, is that in order to challenge a law, you actually have to have someone who has been tried and convicted for the law, because otherwise no one has standing to challenge the law in court. Because to have standing, you have to have been negatively affected by whatever it is you're trying to challenge. So you can't just say, I don't like this law, therefore I sue the government. It doesn't matter how much you don't like the law. If you didn't run afoul of it, you don't have standing to challenge it. Because the court isn't going to just take anyone who's ever saying, I don't like the law. Because, I mean, think about how many laws you don't like. Like, if you could file a lawsuit for every single one, then, and anyone who disliked a law could file a lawsuit, that's like, it would just be chaos. The courts couldn't get anything done. All they would be doing is processing these lawsuits and rejecting them, most likely, but still. So that's the thing. And that's also a thing that happened during the Civil Rights Movement. What they would do is, in order to challenge, say, a segregation law, various groups, sometimes even companies, would pay someone to specifically violate a segregation law and then pay their lawyers to defend them so they could try to challenge it. One famous case happened with segregation on the railroads. The railway companies weren't happy with this because it frequently meant that they had to run many more passenger cars than they needed because they couldn't put black and white passengers in the same passenger cars, but you frequently didn't get enough of either to fill up entire passenger cars. So you just had extra passenger cars, which just cost them money. So they hired a man who looked white, but who had one grandparent who was black. And they had him sit in the white cart. And then when the ticket guy came by, who was in on this, he specifically asked this guy, are you white? He said no. He said, well, then you have to move to the next cart. Again, he said no. He was taken off the train and arrested. And this is all what the railway company wanted because they didn't like this law because it cost them money. So this is a common tactic in the United States throughout history is you get someone to either say they violated a law or violate a law because it's a low penalty and you want to challenge it. But we're going to keep going.
The law in Tennessee says you can't teach evolution. So I don't want you bringing in evidence for evolution. That doesn't matter whether there's evidence for it. The question is, did he break the law? That was the question. So even though these evolutionists had these grandiose plans of making a big deal out of using this case to bring all their evidence for evolution in, the judge disallowed anything.
That's broadly true. There was some amount of argument about the validity of evolution versus young Earth creationism or whatever. Well, actually, it was old Earth creationism at the time primarily. But yeah. Oh, am I getting an echo?
Well, no, I don't
Reports
think
of an
so. I'm
echo.
not hearing anything.
Okay.
Oh. Well, while you're digging into that, I completely reject the idea that scientific theories need to be adjudicated in a court of law,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like a judge should never get to rule on like how gravity works, right? Because law and science are just such vastly different fields, and evidentiary standards for the justice system are completely different than we need to say support a hypothesis in science.
They're generally much lower, even for criminal cases.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you have to, conclude a trial. You can't talk about it for 50 years.
No, you can't. There's an actual obligation to conduct justice swiftly.
Exactly. Whereas in science, yeah, we can debate about stuff in papers for decades.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, there's a saying in legal circles, which is justice delayed is justice denied. Until the justice is served, justice has not been given. You haven't received justice. And so you have to very carefully balance the need to have accurate court rulings with the fact that if rulings just don't come in any kind of timely fashion, you might as well have just not had the ruling. In fact, a case that I've been following that was cited in an affidavit to say, hey, it's been 2 years since this case was decided. Maybe we should finally hold the person who's been willfully ignoring the decision in contempt of court. Please? After 2 years of contempt, maybe? After multiple cases of perjury, maybe?
Yeah.
So
I don't know what you're talking about, but I could go for some Burger King.
Anyway, the unfortunate fact, though, is that when it comes to education, science is going to intersect with the law because many states have statutes about science education. And so if you have a statute that says something like, teachers have to teach scientifically accurate information or something, then when there's a challenge to whether or not they have, it has to go to the court because it's a statutory violation, or at least an alleged statutory violation. And where do statutory violations get adjudicated? In the courtroom, not the literature. So that is where it goes in. But I do think that judges should default to what is the consensus of professionals in the field. And if that's the consensus, then that's what science is. So we're gonna hit play.
He said, I don't care about the evidence for evolution. It doesn't matter, because that's not what's on trial here. But one of the things they were working very hard and preparing to bring in as evidence was Nebraska Man. The American Museum of Natural History in New York, the director at the time was Henry Fairfield Osborn, who was a racist through and through.
Hooray! It was the 19th century. Everyone was.
And we'll get in a lot more of his quotes later when we get into seminar part.
You might as well have just said it was in the 19th century. Or no, the early 20th century. Sorry, it was in the early 20th century. It's like...
Yeah.
It's like saying no one had a freezer in their home. We know, Kent. Absolutely everyone was in this box. Thanks.
5, if we ever get that far. But the racism that evolution breeds. Osborn was one of the guys who went around promoting this as proof for evolution. Nebraska Man is proof for evolution. Here we have the proof.
No, basically everyone rejected it, and it was never proved because it made no sense ever.
Right in your hands. How can you not believe it? It was a tooth. Later they found out the tooth really came from a peccary, a pig.
Holy crap, he almost got it right and then he got it wrong. So I'm going to take 2 drinks, one for getting it right and one for getting it wrong.
Okay.
Okay, so it was a peccary tooth, but peccaries are not pigs. Pigs are members of Suidae, a family of artiodactyls, and peccaries are members of Tiosuidae, the sister group to Suidae, but are not in fact pigs. You can differentiate because Tiosuids have fewer toes, They also have tusks that always point down, whereas suids have tusks that curl up. And Tayasuidae is native to South America and southern parts of North America. So, for instance, if you're in Texas or New Mexico or very far southern California or Arizona, you can get peccaries, but I'm also getting extremely low upload rates from my broadcasting software, so we might be stuttering or something. So, if that is the case, I'm sorry. Yep, we're getting some buffering. I don't know, it looks like it's starting to come back. Sorry about that, guys. There's not a whole lot I can do. Oh, looks like it came back. I think we just had a weird little hiccup in our internet connection. Sorry about that, everybody. You know, it happens. I'm going to blame YouTube and our friend Sphincter of Doom. Now, I'm not saying it's Sphincter of Doom's fault. I'm just blaming him.
There's the real Nebraska man, right there, folks.
That's not a peccary. That's a domesticated
Actually,
pig.
okay, Dapper, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a question. So you said that the tooth that they found was a molar, and it had the 3 bump things.
It didn't have the 3 bump things. That's the thing. It was actually worn down.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was worn to be almost flat on top, which is a sign of advanced age in a mammal. Yeah, but the thing is that pig molars have roots that are very similar to ape roots. So if you have a worn ape molar and a worn pig tooth, they're or peccary tooth for that matter, they're extremely similar because the root structure and the size and the overall shape are very similar. So if they're significantly worn down so that you can't see the tricuspid shape of the molars, they're very difficult to distinguish. This is actually a problem that you run into with other taxa. So for instance, one of the challenging things in mammal paleontology is distinguishing animals that are on, whether they're on the horse or the rhinoceros side of Paracerdactyla, right? So there's, we have equids on one side, and then we have I can't say the word. It's rhinoceratoidea. It's a ridiculous word. But it's basically rhinos and tapirs and their relatives. And the thing is, the only way to distinguish them, especially early on, is by subtle differences in the shape of their teeth. But if the teeth are worn, you might not be able to. And so you'll get these just sort of unclassified paracerdactyl teeth in a drawer somewhere. And it'll be like, this belonged to something, you know? Now, this is obviously much more closely related. In fact, you know, peccaries and pigs are more closely related to horses than they are to humans. But it's still the same type of problem where you have 2 different groups that have very similar dentition in some circumstances.
It was a pig's tooth. I had an evolutionist get all upset with me and said, don't you know there's a difference between a peccary and a pig? Well, look at them both side by side. Okay, the peccary's still alive in South America, running around doing just fine.
Yeah, no one's saying it's extinct. They're just not the same animal, Kent. You can't call them the same thing. It's fair to get upset with you. It would be like if you said, this is a dog, and what you actually meant was that it was like a raccoon. Raccoons and dogs aren't the same animals. They have many similarities. They're closely related, but that's true. Kent doesn't care.
Kent doesn't care about those facts.
Yeah.
He just doesn't care about that.
He doesn't
He's
really care
willfully
about accuracy.
No.
He's willfully ignorant on all of that stuff.
Well, the thing is, apparently he does know. He just doesn't care to be correct. Because he's right now acknowledging that peccaries are a distinct organism and that they're found in South America.
That's absurd.
And I think I figured out why I might be getting an echo partially. Let me see if I can do a couple things. I think there is somehow an echo coming through from someone's Discord, and I don't know who it is, but I turned on some options that should hopefully be starting to get rid of it. But
Okay. I know there's a minor difference, but they're a very similar animal. Okay.
they're in entirely separate families, Kent. This is the kind of thing that creationists call separate kinds, right? Like, that's kind of a big deal. Although I don't actually know, I would have to double check, because I do now have a list of the kinds on the Ken Ham's arc. Maybe they actually don't separate out Tayasuidae from Suidae. That would be an interesting thing to check on.
Let's look at Piltdown Man. In 1912, an amateur archaeologist named Dawson and a French Catholic priest who loved the evolution theory named Pierre de Chardin.
The Chardin, it's de Chardin. at the end. But whatever. You know what? Kent's not French.
Longer name than that. And all those French always have 8 names, you know, but he had...
That's literally Pierre from Chardin. That's 2 names and the word of or from in this context.
Real long name. Anyway, and a guy named Woodward, and nobody's for sure who's involved in this, but who made this happen. But they were looking for evidence for evolution. Now, if you get somebody who's determined he wants to find evidence for his theory, he's eventually going to find some evidence for his theory.
That's broadly true. Kind of like when you have Kent Hovind going around pretending that there's evidence for the flood because he wants it to be true. So I'm going to take a quick drink, because that is true. It just doesn't...
I'm just going to drink for projection.
That's
That's going to
fair.
be one of the rules that I do. So, because it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, Vishanti points out that another good translation for Pierre de Chardin is Peter from the garden. Yeah.
Even if he has to interpret what he finds in the light of his theory.
Although I'm not sure if it was Chardin or Jardin, because one of those is garden and the other one I believe is a city.
Which is probably what everybody does. We're all guilty of that. Okay?
Well, you certainly are, Kent. Good point.
Which is why you have to have other people check your work and say, hey, here's where you're wrong. Sorry about that. Well, this Catholic priest...
I love that he's encouraging here the idea of people checking your work, but when other creationists have checked his work, he completely rejects it. He's like, nope. And by the way, guys, I'm noticing that less than half of my viewers have hit like so far. So, you guys, yeah, Maddie is right to be shocked and offended.
Yeah.
Pierre de Chardin and these other guys were digging around in this gravel pit looking for the missing link.
You don't normally look in a gravel pit for fossils. Because the thing about
the missing link.
Right.
Yeah,
also, were they
missing.
looking for specifically the missing link?
The missing. There's one missing link for all of life, and they're looking for it.
So
only be one. Can we have a Highlander-style tournament of all the missing links?
I actually don't think it would be completely impossible for them to have been looking for hominin fossils. One of the things was, at the time, a lot of various countries were looking for hominin fossils where they were, because basically everyone wanted to be the cradle of humanity, and no one really knew where it was.
Yeah.
And also at the time, it was possible...
And was everyone...
Sorry, what was the question?
Was everybody in 1912 real upset when they found it in Africa? Because of the racism.
Not really. There was still some question as to whether or not the origin of Homo sapiens was solitary or like multi-regional. So there was an idea that perhaps modern humans sort of grew out of various ape populations in various locations, and that turns out not to have been the case, but it was still a current idea at the time. So it was, people were saying, well, maybe, humans essentially sort of convergently evolved into similar forms from closely related apes that had previously spread to different locations, and then they just kind of somehow all ended up being humans with regional variations. And this was kind of tied into the idea of orthogenesis, which is that there's this sort of set evolutionary trajectory, and evolutionary groups have like a momentum that carries them onto this trajectory. And so perhaps all of these apes in separate places were just on the human trajectory, and so in separate locations they ended up becoming humans. We now know that orthogenesis is just not a real part of evolution. It's not true. That doesn't happen.
Right.
And also we know, based on overwhelming evidence, that humans did not arise separately in different locations. They arose as Homo sapiens in a particular place in Africa and spread out from there.
Now keep in mind, in the early 1900s, evolution theory had been out for 60 years. Darwin had predicted, we're going to find evidence for my theory. It had been 60 years since Darwin's theory came out, and there was still no evidence.
Nope, there was a whole host of evidence. In fact, Archaeopteryx, which Darwin had predicted 2 years before it was found, had already been found. There was already confirmed fossil finds, which Darwin had already admitted that the lack of fossils supporting his theory was one of the bigger objections, but that if his theory were true, he would expect to find forms such as, and he went on to predict some. Well, what do you know? 2 years later, one was actually found. So there was a lot of evidence.
they started getting
think,
pretty.
like, I think what's the misrepresentation that's happening here is Kent is describing evidence, like of specific evidence of human evolution, as though, like, again, as though that, like, the end goal of evolution is to make a human, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I just think that's a really common misconception.
Yeah, he has this idea of the ladder of being.
And that, like, yeah, and, like, the other thing that I think is worth pointing out is that, like, they had tons of evidence for other forms of evolution that you could, like, see happening on shorter timescales for things with shorter lifespans or things that we had a broader fossil record for. But anyhow,
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
desperate. And so people were looking for proof for this theory. And so probably Woodward or the Catholic priest Pierre de Chardin.
Yes, probably one of the people who found the hoax, perpetrated the hoax. Good job, Kent. Way to puzzle it out.
Took a human skull,
Cranium.
just the skull cap, the top part of the skull,
No, it was a cranium. It was not just the skull cap.
and the jawbone from an orangutan,
That's broadly true, so we'll take a drink.
an ape. They broke off the places where they would normally fit together, where
No, they filed them down. But also, if they only had a skull cap, they wouldn't need to file down the temporal mandibular joint. They would just leave it. So the story doesn't even work, Kent, as you're telling it. You could tell it correctly, Kent. You choose to be an idiot about the story in a way that doesn't help you.
the hinges go together. They broke those off because they'd be real obvious they didn't go together if those pieces were on there. So they broke off the important pieces. They stained them with, first they treated them with acid to make them look old and pitted, stained them with some kind of chemical to make them look old.
Yes, that is how you stain things. You stain them with a chemical. That's broadly true. We'll take a drink. Yep.
I'll drink some chemical.
Yep, me too. I just drank some. Actually, I drank a whole bunch of chemicals. There's probably like a few. There's got to be at least a few dozen chemicals in this glass.
At least. I
mean, one of them is dihydrogen monoxide, and the other one is ethanol.
Good question though, but how do you, with your tiny hands, bring the glass to your mouth?
Oh, I have my butler do it.
Well, I know your butler also has given you straws.
Yeah. Although dinosaurs are bad at straws
Well,
because they don't have lips so much.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. See, dinosaurs can't make a kissy face because they don't have muscular lips. It's one of the challenges of being a dinosaur. But actually, that reminds me. So one
Sounds
time,
difficult.
I was at a Navy hospital for it was just some routine checkup or something. And I'm filling out a little questionnaire, and they're like, oh, do you drink alcohol? And I was like, yes. And then they had, like, what kind of alcohol do you drink? And I was like, ethanol? I literally wrote ethanol in that section on the form.
I wrote Sailor Jerry Spice Rum.
Well, the thing was, like, I didn't have a specific kind of alcohol I drink. Sometimes I drink that and the other, and I was just like, you know what? Ethanol covers it. All the alcohol I drink is ethanol. So, yeah, I don't think that's what they were expecting on that form, but it's what they got.
Sam, I drink my daily allotment of rum that I am allowed per regulation.
Yes,
right?
Per Navy regulations, you're still getting your, what is it? It was for a while. It was actually quite a lot. It was like you get like a pint of rum a day.
It couldn't have been a day.
Or maybe it was a week.
I would believe a pint of grog.
Oh yeah, it could be grog. Well, the reason grog was invented was because people were getting too drunk, and then what they ended up doing was they said, all right, we're gonna mix the rum with water to the point where it's weak enough that it will go bad if you hoard it, because people would hoard their rum rations, and then they would just get completely hammered every like couple weeks. And that was not a good way to go about business on the ship.
And went out and buried him in the gravel.
And they added sugar and lime juice.
Yes, the lime juice being very important. Which, by the way,
lime juice is very important.
Grog is actually pretty good. I like grog. Once you add that sugar and the lime juice, it's actually a pretty good drink. It's very simple.
Yeah, no, I drink, like, I guess I would drink a simple cocktail of like rum with a little like sweetened lime juice in it over ice, and that's delicious. But grog at dining out is disgusting.
Oh yeah, it's the kind of thing I would make for myself. It's yeah. Although I also make gimlets for myself, which is similar in that it's gin and lime juice primarily. There's basically nothing else in it except for sugar.
Pit.
Yeah.
Close to each other. They went out fossil hunting a few days later, and guess what they found? Oh, look at this. Wow. Proof for evolution.
Yeah.
They planted it themselves, apparently.
Well, we're not sure about that. No one actually knows who perpetrated the hoax, but it's reasonable to think one of them might have.
This came to be known as the Piltdown Man because it was from Piltdown, which is near England. Or it's in England. It's near London, England. The Piltdown
Yes, it's in England. He did correct himself, so...
Commons, I believe. It was a gravel pit. Piltdown Man was in the textbooks for 40 years. All the kids for 40 years were taught, we've got proof for evolution from the Piltdown Man.
Well, it wasn't just that, but...
Wait, let's pause there.
I already did.
Yeah, because Piltdown Man, yeah. So he does this thing of like, if this was a hoax that took 40 years to overturn, that doesn't mean it was in a child science textbook, right?
Well, so it was in science
generally
textbooks.
speaking, okay. I was like, just generally speaking, science textbooks, especially for biology, are usually 50 years behind.
They often are, yeah, which is really sad.
Yeah.
So it did make its way into textbooks. However, the thing was that as time went on, so basically at first it was like, oh, hey, that's cool. We found a hominin. Now I'm using modern terms for these organisms, but we found a hominin in England. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, but then as time went on, and we found more and more hominin fossils in Africa, and essentially none, except for very recent finds, such as like Neanderthals or early Homo sapiens, in areas in Europe, people started to say, well, how does Piltdown Man fit into any of this? Like, how do we put this into the picture? And so if you look at trees of hominins from before the hoax was eventually found out, but towards the end of the period where it was still broadly accepted, you'll actually see Piltdown Man as basically being a sister group to the entire rest of the hominins, because people couldn't figure out where to put it, so they figured it just must be the outgroup for the rest of homininae. And then eventually, when people were like, even that doesn't make sense, then people started to look into it, and they were like, oh, hey, look, when we examine it under a microscope, we find that it has tool marks from obvious modern tools like iron files. And then we find out that the apparent aging, we can still find chemical traces of what's basically wood stain on the supposed fossil. And so it was actually evolutionary biologists doing their job who figured out that this didn't fit the story they were getting from the fossils and therefore rejected it.
That's actually something I was going to point out. Of like the point here is that, like, does fraud in science happen? Yes,
Absolutely.
but it's not non-scientists that figure it out. It's the same community. Like the kind of the way Kent phrases this, or Kent frames it, is the idea that like this was like Piltdown Man was discovered like super reluctantly, because of some outside pressure, but like it's not like the creationists crusaders going in and having to overturn all these hoaxes, right? It's no, when there have been hoaxes, the people that overturn them still are very pro-evolution, my guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because even with Nebraska Man, which was, I think, a bigger weird thing that happened, although it was taken even less seriously than Piltdown Man. Even that wasn't discovered by zealous creationists trying to fight the good fight against evolution. That's not what happened. So yeah, I don't. It's a very strange dynamic that Kent is like, see all these hoax. Only one of them was a hoax. Nebraska Man was a legit mistaken identity by a non-expert. And so he's like, oh, hey, look at all
Right.
these things that people got wrong in the past. It's like, yeah, but it was not you who figured it out. It was the people who know what they're talking about. And universally,
Right.
the people who know what they're talking about know that evolution is true. But we are also at the 1 hour mark, and so I'm going to give us, or we're about at the 1 hour mark. I'm going to go ahead and take a about 4 minutes or so intermission, refresh my glass, which is sadly all the ice has melted. So now my drink is getting warm and it's already a bit watery, which is no bueno.
Oh no.
No bueno.
No
So
bueno.
we are going to go to a quick intermission, and then we will be back in approximately 4 minutes.
I want to take a moment to talk about something serious. There is a problem facing late surviving non-avian dinosaurs in modern America. Hunting is very strictly regulated and only allowed at certain times of the year. This means that for much of the year we have to rely on farm-raised food, which means money. If you want to help a starving dinosaur, please consider donating on Patreon or buying from my merch store. Links are in the description. Please help. Dinosaurs all over YouTube are depending on you to help them through the hunting off-season.
Oh, Nani? Dare? Oh, Gojira desu ka? Hai, Gojira-san. Hai.
Okay, and we are back from that wonderful intermission. And we are going to go ahead and bring back up Kent. And I'm hoping we've got less than 5 minutes. We got a little bit more than 4 minutes of Kent. So I'm hoping we can get through it and then get to the next video that I want to start, because that's the one that's brand new this month. I don't just mean in the last 4 weeks. I mean this calendar month. This video was uploaded to Kent Hovind's channel like 3 days ago.
If you're watching this on a future date, this is premiering on July the 6th. So this is in the past.
2021. In the year
Yeah,
of
this
our
is in the
Lord,
past.
2021.
So if you do the math,
Yeah.
it came out pretty recently.
Yes.
If you had gone to school in the 1930s or 1940s or early 1950s, your textbook would have said, evolution is true, and here's the evidence for it. And Piltdown Man would have been one of the things you'd have to learn and study and memorize.
Oh, so it's one of the things. It was never the thing like Kent Hovind implied. Got it, Kent.
1953, it was exposed as a fraud.
Yeah.
See, here's the problem. When they get these cavemen, somebody will find the bones. They will reassemble it what they think it looked like, because the bones are usually pretty broken up.
this is all broadly true, so I'm going to take a drink.
I believe, for instance, Lucy, the skull of Lucy had 200 pieces.
I don't know.
Talk about a jigsaw puzzle.
It had a lot. I don't know how many.
First,
Maddie, I think you're muted.
Listen, I've
there you go.
watched the hit Fox series. I've watched the hit Fox series Bones. I know what forensic anthropology is.
Yeah, that's the thing, is
People can reconstruct stuff.
very reliably, too. Yeah, so the thing is, it's... I get that a layperson like Kent Hovind may not know how to reconstruct a skull. But experts do. And they can be tested on this by giving skulls that we know what they look like and saying, hey, can you reconstruct this? And while they're not going to ever get it completely 100% on the money, they get close enough that you can even do things like, do forensics reconstructions and find murder victims based on fragmented remains.
Yeah, right. It works basically the same way as like a police sketch artist, right? Like, I mean, obviously that's really simplified, but like for somebody who's not in this type of field, it's maybe a good way to think about it, right? That somebody can, recreate a picture without ever having seen a person,
Yep.
place you're not even sure you have all the pieces.
No, we're sure that we didn't have all the pieces. That's the thing. We know for certain we did not.
Try to put together a puzzle like that.
Well, it's a lot easier when you're like, oh, hey, I know exactly what every bone in the skull looks like. And this part is absolutely 100% this part of the skull, which is one of the things. Like, no person who's an expert at, like, this kind of work is going to be like, oh, is this a zygomatic arch, or is this part of the temporal bone? Like, it's not going to be a question.
Yeah, it's also like, that sounds hard, but like, that's why it's a specialized field.
That's why
right?
those people go to school
I
for a
don't know,
long
like,
time.
Yeah. Also, like, I'm crap at drawing, right? So I am not an artist. But if I sat down and worked on that for the next 10 years straight, I would get a lot better at it. Like, but I can't do it right now. And that seems like, so when someone paints a painting, it seems a lot like magic to me because I don't have the technical skills that they do.
But you understand that people have those skills, and Uncle Kent, no relation, acts like he doesn't understand that other people have those skills because he doesn't have those skills. So how could anyone have those skills? That's just the way he acts, and I think that's how he thinks.
If I can't do it, how could anyone?
Yeah.
And I don't understand. I think he really thinks he's the smartest person on earth.
Well, he does have a lot of traits of a narcissist, so he probably does think that. He probably legitimately thinks he is the most skilled person who has ever lived.
I know he has people that he'll consider experts, and they're good Christian men, even though they don't agree with him on everything, and he'll always say that. And like he thinks he's smarter than those people are. He just thinks that maybe they know one little thing about something that he doesn't know. And if they say something that he disagrees with, he'll just be like, "Oh no, they're stupid."
Yeah. All right, we're gonna hit play.
It's absurd.
But
drink for
they
Godzilla.
put together the Piltdown hoax. It was a deliberate fraud. Broke off the important pieces so they wouldn't discover the fraud. Then they made castings of those pieces, make a replica.
Yeah, that's normal.
Now, the replicas go out to museums all over the world. The real bones are kept locked in a vault where nobody can even look at them.
Well, no, it's where they're not on display to the public, but scientists...
Not nobody.
Right. So, yeah, actually, you don't even have to... You don't actually technically have to be a scientist. If you set up a meeting as a layperson, you're like, hey, I'm doing this project, or, I'm trying to write a book or something like that, and you have some reason... You can be brought into the, behind-the-scenes part of the museum where they will show you their collection of fossils that are not on display. Normal people can go do this. You just have to have some reason. It can't just be like, oh, you're visiting the museum. You, knock on the door and hey, can I see the vault of fossils? They're going to be like, no, go away. But they're not hidden. They're just not on public display because public display is dangerous.
Things on public display are destroyed, right? They get accidents happen, people touch them, they're exposed to weather and elements. So that's most things, if you have a good reason and you ask, you can see it.
Yeah. Actually, one thing that's
Even if you
interesting.
don't have a good reason, you just got to ask nicely.
Yeah, if you ask nicely enough, they may. One of the things that's interesting is look up how many times kids have destroyed multi-million dollar pieces of art in museums. It happens. Kids will, just like fall through a painting, and it's like, oh, you just fell through a 16th century painting that was valued at $40 million, kid. Thanks.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Awesome.
Probably
Take your
none
kids
of
to
you
art
in this
museums,
room
but,
have
control
ever
them.
met
Sorry, by the way, Maddie, for some reason there's like a 5-second delay, so I'm not trying to interrupt you.
anybody who has seen the original bones. They lock them up like they're more important than gold in Fort Knox. Of course, there's no gold in Fort Knox anymore either. That's another long story, but
That's true. Take a drink. There is no more gold in Fort Knox. Sorry, all of you Battlefield Earth fanboys who thought that, in the future the humans really are going to be able to get the gold from Fort Knox to give to the Cyclos, who don't notice that it's stamped with, like, U.S. government stamps for some reason. Look, Battlefield Earth is crazy nonsense, but if you want to see a bad movie, it's great for that. Just get ready for lots of gel color filters and Dutch angles on every shot. Every shot is a Dutch
They also
angle.
have really rapid dialogue too, with like no pauses.
There's a little bit of that. It's also the dialogue just makes no sense,
It's
and
poorly edited. It's hilariously awful.
yeah, it's if you're someone like me or like Ben, I don't know about Maddie, but I suspect Maddie, who likes to watch bad movies because they're bad, it should be on your list. But anyway, enough about L. Ron Hubbard.
Also, yeah, I was about to say, also, if you're obsessed with Scientology, like I am, then the works of L. Ron Hubbard.
This was actually written while he was in hiding from multiple governments. So that's a fun little fact. Yeah.
the replicas went all over the place. Replicas of Piltdown Man. Everybody studied these replicas and said, wow, you're right, There were 500 papers. I used to say there were 500 doctoral dissertations. That's not quite correct. There were 500 research papers, some just for master's degrees or other papers, that were written about the Piltdown fossils. People studied the replicas.
No. Stop it, Kent. Stop it, Kent. Because team and research paper versus a dissertation are completely different things, but it sounds like Kent thinks that all research is done by graduate students, which, not wrong, but
they aren't always listed as the
you get
author.
your dissertation and then you stop doing research?
Yeah, you just have your graduate students do
exactly.
Oh, drink for Mothra.
But
Yeah, Kent doesn't understand.
No.
He just doesn't get
Look,
it.
Kent didn't know that he needed to have a
he
doctoral
does not
dissertation.
understand how research works.
Yeah, he didn't even know he needed a doctoral dissertation when he claimed to have a PhD. Yeah, when people were like, hey, can we read your doctoral dissertation? He was like, what now? And then he wrote his supposed dissertation after he'd already been called out, and now it's private anyway.
Oh, it's private now? Because I've 100% Googled that.
Oh, you can find it on WikiLeaks. But the
Oh,
fact
I
that it has
haven't
to
yet.
be on WikiLeaks means that he doesn't want people reading it.
I still have a copy downloaded.
By the way, if you want to read my master's thesis, you can find it through the library at University of Oklahoma, right?
Like a normal thesis?
Anywho, like a normal
Can we do
thesis.
a side-by-side
You
reading
can read my
comparison?
dad's master's thesis at the university.
Actually, it would be fun to do a side-by-side of, like, someone we know, their thesis or dissertation, and then Kent Hovind's dissertation. Like, let's compare and contrast the writing quality and style.
And said, yep, this goes
Dude,
together.
my
This
thesis
is proof.
super short. It's only like 20 pages.
How did you even get that degree? Oh, drink from Mothra.
Revolution, and wrote a paper, and that paper gets published someplace, and therefore now they can say, look, there's 500 articles published about this. It has to be true. Well, somebody got the brilliant idea to go study the original fossils. Wow, what a novel idea.
It's actually not. Generally speaking, you're really not supposed to, at least in modern paleontology, you're really not supposed to write papers based on reproductions unless you don't have another option because the original doesn't even exist. So, for instance, if you want to write a paper on, say, the Spinosaurus holotype, which was destroyed during the bombing of Berlin in World War II, I mean, you can. You probably would be better off not doing it, but if you really want to, you do have to use replicas and photographs of the original specimen. But generally speaking, in paleontology, the standard is you need to get access to the original fossil in order to write papers about it. Now, that's usually not that crazy difficult, because, again, if you're a researcher doing research, most museums will make it available to you. I mean, heck, Fred Hoyle and his crazy wackadoo buddies got access to the Berlin specimen of Archaeopteryx lithographica, so they could pretend that it was just like a lizard with chicken feathers pressed into cement. And the museum gave them access to the specimen for this purpose. So it's not that difficult to get access to the original fossils.
Looking at them under the microscope, they discovered the teeth had been filed down. There were file marks on the teeth.
No, it was primarily the jaw joint, but okay, whatever. There were also some file marks on the teeth, because you had to get the sort of like canines and whatnot to actually fit onto the top of the human cranium, more or less, which is difficult when you have, honking big orangutan teeth.
The more they studied the originals, the more they realized these don't even go together.
Yeah. But they are the evolutionary biologists, Kent. They're not the young Earth creationists.
In the early 50s, they developed another kind of test to test bones. I think it's fluoride something. Bones absorb fluoride out of the ground. I could look up the name of the test. But
actually, bones are primarily composed of fluoride to some degree. It's a big major part of the actual mineral composition of bones. And in the ground, the fluoride actually tends to be displaced by calcium ions. So bones actually lose calcium over time, lose fluoride over time and gain calcium over time, which I suppose could be used to date a bone, except that it's not an even process. So I'm not sure what technique Kent is talking about. He might just be talking about something made up. I know, shocker, right? But there's some kind of science somewhere in the background of that.
To see how old they were. They found out the skull cap was probably 800 years old. Maybe from a battle back, 800 years ago. England had battles all the time over there. Everybody beating each other with their swords and spears.
It's true, take a drink.
And so they got this skull cap, probably about 800 years old, they guessed. And the jawbone was probably less than 100 years old.
I like how now Kent is all on board with scientific dating methods because they don't contradict a young Earth.
Yeah.
And it was from an orangutan. Now see, the shape of the skull of a human is more rounded as opposed to the monkey skull, which is a very distinctive shape.
That's true.
And if you find a big enough piece of a skull, a good anthropologist can tell you quickly if it's from a human or from an ape.
No.
So this was an obviously human skull cap and an obviously ape-like jaw.
Hold on, though.
No. Yeah, no. Because humans are apes,
A
and there's
good
a gradient.
anthropologist can tell the difference between different animals just based on parts of their skull.
Depending on how much you have
But
of it.
recreating stuff?
Yeah, that's beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm.
Completely crazy.
See, the human jaw is rounded,
Crazy.
whereas ape's jaws is more pointed, kind of like St. Louis arch or a parabola.
It's literally the opposite of what's true. I'm taking a drink. Non-human apes, and monkeys in general, tend to have squarish tooth rows. So you have the molars projecting forward, and then right around the canines, they tend to take an almost 90-degree turn to be just kind of flat across the face, right? Humans have a parabolic tooth row. So they have a smooth transition from the essentially, horizontal line between the two front incisors, and then it just curves back smoothly. Apes do not have narrow, pointy jaws. They have the exact opposite. They have broad, blunt, square jaws.
And so one of the things they go by for determining, this is the shape roughly of a human lower jaw. Your teeth will line up,
That's true. Take a drink.
in this configuration, whereas an ape's is more elongated.
You erased the gene?
But that's the exact opposite of what's actually happening. He should have drawn a little, open-ended box with the open end at the bottom. So this is completely wrong. This is 100% absolute nonsense. Also, for some reason, I have this on Top Chat, and I'm sorry. I don't know why. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to rant a little bit about YouTube, and then we're going to go right back. I hate that YouTube defaults for me to Top Chat. I want it to be on live chat, and if I have too many chats coming in, I can choose to put on slow mode. YouTube, if you ever watch this, I know you won't, but if you ever do, please make it so that for the streamer, live chat is the default. I hate it when it's on Top Chat because I know I'm missing things.
Like that. And this was an obviously an ape-like jaw, but obviously human skull. And so they said, "Wow, this is evolution."
Cameraman doing?
Doing something for the first time in
Is
this
he
entire
falling
video.
over?
Possibly.
And
Oh,
this
he's
is where
back
they
from
got
lunch. Okay.
the idea that probably the brain evolved into human first before speech evolved.
Which was later overturned by earlier hominid finds that found that the skull developed into a human-like condition much, much later than the rest of the body.
Oh, this is proof, all right. You know, what more could you ask for? They're so desperate to make that theory true because that's the only way to get rid of God.
No, evolution could be false and God could still not exist. There have been atheists since long before Charles Darwin.
Well, it turned out to be a fraud. This article here from Reader's Digest 1956 explained, more about this built-down.
Reader's Digest, noted scientific journal.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Reader's Digest. By the way, Dapper, am I still on a weird delay?
That's a little bit less, but yeah, you are.
All right, I think I'm going to jump out and jump back in because
Okay.
it's bothering me.
Bye, Maddie.
Bye. Bye.
Maddie's almost back.
Hello. And
Hello.
yeah. Okay.
Oh,
No more.
yeah, it looks like you're good.
Okay, awesome.
Hoax, if you want to get that article. I went to quite a few libraries looking for this article. I found.
That's it. That's where the video stops. And I don't care if that's not all of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so here.
All right.
Yup.
So let's talk a little.
No, stop. I don't want this video to play, you stupid media player. Stop it. That's the wrong video. We're going for...
We're not watching this video.
No, not this one. We're going to watch this one.
Dinosaur Adventureland, where God gets the glory for his creation. We're sick and tired of this stupid evolution theory telling everybody that we came from a rock, which came from a dot of nothing. And you don't go anywhere when you die but back to dust. We're tired of it. This is
No, essentially none of which is actually taught by evolutionary biology. So,
Well, yeah, I don't think that's true, Kent.
our creation
That's
boot.
not how any of that works.
oh, by the way, this is the Creation Bootcamp released on, I think it was like July 3rd or 4th or something. But this video features Matt Powell, everyone's favorite moron.
Camp. Matt Powell's going to come speak in a few minutes. How did you guys like the real tour this morning? You like it? We only got halfway done.
All right, we're not going to listen to
We
the
got to
real
go do the
tour.
rest of it. Matt Powell speaking from 9 until as long as he wants. And then we have more tour time after that.
Oh,
So
come
if you
on.
haven't had the barn tour or the playground tour
Oh.
Barn
or the
tour?
science center tour
I can't
or the
pause it
outside
now.
tour,
What are you doing
let
to
me
me?
know. We'll take you that lunch at 12 o'clock.
Technical
1 to 3,
difficulties.
swimming and fishing if
And
you want to
take it
go.
over the
Or
stream.
look around the science center. And then 3 to 5 this
He's a
afternoon.
Pretty good ventriloquist. I'll give him
All
that.
right, well, I closed that, so we're going to bring it back up and see what happens. For some reason, Kent, wrong thing. Kent just broke my computer,
Yeah.
I guess.
Dinosaur Adventureland, where
And my
God gets the
brain.
glory for his creation. We're
Okay.
And the English language with his nonsense.
Yeah, seriously. Oh, I have to reshare.
Noted scientific journal, Reader's Digest. Look, even if you're not part of a university, you can get access to those papers through membership at certain public libraries,
Mhm.
right? Like,
But certainly not through Sci-Hub. You should absolutely never go to Sci-Hub in, I believe, sci-hub.net, right? I want to make sure I get where not to go correct.
Mhm.
So I think it's
you should
sci-hub.net.
also never email the author of record
Right.
and just ask for a copy. That's also definitely not a thing that you can
Yeah.
do.
We encourage you to spend hundreds of dollars to get subscriptions to various research journals, and certainly not to either email the author or just use sci-hub.net. Because, I mean, look, Russians made it, and it's illegal, so yeah, those are two really bad things. I'm against Russia and illegal things. So, you think that means that Trump will give me some money if I say I'm against Russia? No, because he likes Russia, doesn't he?
Yeah, but we have to stop everything because there's a puppy behind Bent right now.
Yes, there is. Oh,
What is a pup? Oh, bye, pupper.
there's probably another one, too.
Hey, you want to come up on the tree?
Uh-huh.
I think she's
Oh.
thinking about it.
There she is.
Well,
Barely see her. All right, we're going to hit play on Kent, though.
Sick and tired of this stupid
Okay.
evolution theory telling everybody that we came from a rock, which came from a dot of nothing. And you don't go anywhere
I actually came from Iran, not Iraq.
when you die, but back to dust. We're tired of it. This is our Creation Bootcamp. Matt Powell's going to come speak in a few minutes. How did you guys like the real tour this morning?
Okay,
Adventureland.
here we
Come on
go.
up here, brother. Yay.
Clap.
Hey, man, thank you.
Here he is, the air and space
All right.
himself.
Well, it's good to be here, everybody. I just want to say thanks to Dr. Hovind and Creation Science Evangelism.
What did he actually
my name's
say,
Matt.
doctor?
The same reason that he calls Raw Matt a doctor, and that in this video, I believe he calls our very own guest Maddie. Dr. Maddie, I think is what he uses. Because
I think so. Because I refused to give Kent my full name and telephone number in my debate with him.
weird.
Weird. It's so weird that I don't want to just put that out on the internet.
That's crazy.
Powell, as many of you know, I do videos online exposing atheists,
Come on, cameraman.
atheist YouTubers, college.
I love he says exposing YouTube atheists. So first, this isn't a YouTube atheist channel. However, I've never seen him do anything that I would even remotely call attempting to expose atheist YouTubers. He sometimes tries to disagree with them about science, and that's about it, which is not the same thing.
No. You could say debunk, right? That would be an appropriate term.
Yeah, that might work. But yeah,
Well, not for what he does, but for what he thinks he does,
Right.
So exposing atheist YouTubers isn't even what he thinks he does.
Yeah.
Right? What he thinks he does is debunk them.
Right. And the thing is, exposing them would be like, oh, if you found out that, I don't know, Logic was actually, a convicted murderer.
Right.
Then,
right.
And you were like, oh, hey, guys, did you know that Logic is actually this guy who killed 3 people in Ottawa in 1998?
37, right?
Well, maybe. But, then that would be exposing an atheist YouTuber or something like that. It's
Right.
like, oh, hey, Cosmic Skeptic actually was convicted of running cocaine in Glasgow in 2012. Okay, well, you've exposed an atheist YouTuber. Congratulations.
Yay.
But all right, this
Yeah.
isn't really a scientific point. I want to get to those.
Students in my demographic that make fun of the Bible.
Yeah.
I try to turn the mirror on them and make fun and make light of silly ideologies. And so the title of my message today is The Case for Creation.
Isn't that already a book that was written by, Lee Strobel? He's behind most of those The Case for books, isn't he?
Yeah, he did the case for Christ. I don't know if he.
Oh, I think it's The
don't know
Case
if
for
he's-
a Creator. That's the book.
Okay.
Okay. So it's not quite the same title. So Matt
Right.
hasn't entirely stolen Lee Strobel's shtick.
Shtick. Gotcha.
And so I believe that there's a very strong case for intelligent design. People say, if you believe the Bible, you're just believing a primitive book. And it's just so crazy because within the Bible.
Okay, first, I just going to say, at least 2 of the 3 people on this panel are Christians. So you guys, you believe the Bible in a capacity as religious scripture, right?
Yeah, and I don't ever remember anyone calling it. No, it hasn't happened. But that
Okay.
term, a primitive book.
Yeah.
Does that mean that
People say a lot about the Bible. They don't call it that.
Does that mean that you guys reject evolution, even though you also no? Weird. Okay, so
Weird.
now
It's almost like Matt's position is a minority position within his own faith.
it is.
What?
Oh no. Josiah Sanson has logic is a murderer is now canon at Dapper Dino, but he spelled it like the big weapon and not like canon for like a book series. So what I'm now picturing is a big hunk of metal with a breech where you can load a cannonball that says logic is a murderer on it.
And
then
is
you
that
use
his
it.
murder weapon?
Maybe. That would
That
be interesting.
canon?
That would be interesting.
So Logic, I know Logic does occasionally watch my stuff. If you do actually watch this one, buddy, tell me on Discord whether or not you own a cannon that says Logic is a murderer, and if you don't, I can at least get you like a 3D model of it that you can put somewhere on a set.
So one of my favorite things, so Matt, one of his most obnoxious tactics or like rhetoric techniques that he's using here is the like people say, right? Like it's an even worse version of conversations that never happen.
Right, like who says it?
Who says it? Yeah, and he does this. He like I am convinced that Matt doesn't actually talk to real people. He just imagines conversations, right?
Yeah.
And he imagines things other people say because I've never heard him reference like a real conversation, just things that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have a virgin conceiving by the Holy Ghost. Isn't that crazy that a virgin could conceive? Well, here's the thing, folks. They think a rock conceived.
Oh, that's dumb. So take a drink.
Not a whiskey.
You're out completely?
No, there's more over there.
Maddie,
Who did that rock marry?
I have here tell that you have a spouse, and what are spouses for if not for getting you new booze?
He is all right. I'm just gonna turn my camera off for a minute. I'm listening. I'm on. I'm just
You're telling your spouse to get you some booze?
well, I'm just gonna get myself some booze.
Oh, okay.
And mention while you're getting it that the next one should be from the spouse.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do.
Okay.
In fact, they think a rock is your ancient ancestor.
So here's the thing. No. So I've looked into there are actually creationists who cite papers claiming that is, or not even necessarily papers, but just cite things that say that this is what, I'm sorry, is evidence that evolution says that, people came from rocks. And invariably, it comes down to one of two things. Either the rocks are cited as a location where certain prebiotic chemical reactions may have taken place, or some of the chemicals that were in rocks may have come out of the rocks into solution with water, and then later on, those chemicals were important in later prebiotic chemistry that would lead to life. In no way does that mean that a rock is your ancestor.
So why don't we explain prebiotic to the audience?
Prebiotic just means things that happened before there was life and weren't the result directly themselves of life.
And they also help contribute to factors that can help promote life.
Well, in the context of abiogenesis, then yes, but you can also have prebiotic things that didn't. So, for instance, we have like banded iron deposits that happened before significant amounts of oxygen were in the atmosphere, and some of these are prebiotic, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the formation of this banded iron that is prebiotic helped with the formation of life. So it's a context-dependent thing as to whether or not prebiotic has to do with abiogenesis, or whether it just means literally there wasn't life at the time.
I have a non sequitur.
Go for it.
I've switched to beer, and this is my favorite beer to drink for these types of streams. It's a Belgian quad, and it's called Bearded Theologian.
Nice. Look, I'm going to say that I've known multiple people who've indicated to me from multiple different theological traditions and cultures that if you're not drinking beer during your theological discussions, you're probably not doing it right.
Right? This is a Belgian style, right? Belgian styles are derived from very specific monasteries in Belgium.
There you go.
Right? This can't be, it's a Trappist style ale, but they can't call this a Trappist ale because it was not made by Trappist monks in Belgium.
Yeah, and if it says Trappist, it actually has to be made by the monks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they're Trappist monks. That's the name of their order.
Yeah.
And so they walk all over their ancestors. So, case for creation. Here's a picture of my family. Well, not quite yet.
Come on,
my
tech
wife
guy.
and I and our son. We are from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Have I been to Grand Rapids? No, I don't think I have. Bent?
Also,
have you?
Matt Powell's wife, if you ever watch this, like, love, I've got nothing but empathy for you. If, in all sincerity, if you ever need to talk, please reach out.
Yeah.
Like, no judgment. I'm a little concerned for you.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
And, the Bible says that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And so I believe, because people always say, well, you Christians don't want people to be knowledgeable about science.
No, I only say that about creationists. Most Christians aren't in that, so I don't say that. So I'm going to take a drink for just him projecting like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
We're back to... Also, do you like that even when he's quoting the Bible, he doesn't even tell you what you're quoting? It's just the Bible says.
The Bible, somewhere in there, it says this. And
somewhere in there, it says this.
The thing is that the Bible is big enough that you can say that about just about anything, and unless someone's really good at the Bible, they're probably not going to be able to call you on it. So,
right. My Bible trivia is not that good. Second, I also know that he's paraphrasing King James there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he's part of the NIFB, and they're primarily King James only, as far as I know.
Right. Right. I think Matt's a King James onlyist. I'm like 90% sure Kent Hovind is.
Oh, I'm 100% sure he is.
Okay. And I'm slightly less confident that Matt is than I am with Kent Hovind, but I'm pretty sure Matt's a King James onlyist.
It would be hard for me to imagine otherwise.
Yeah. But like even there, man, like just quote the verse. Like,
yeah,
and sometimes when I'm trying to pull a Bible verse out of the deep recesses of my brain, because that happens sometimes, I'll be like, oh, I don't remember where this is from, but I know it's one of Paul's letters, right? Like,
there are good websites for looking up Bible verses.
Yep. If you type in what you remember of a Bible verse, it'll pop up immediately.
Oh yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
So, and look, I've said things like, I know it says this in the Bible somewhere. So I type it into like Google or something, and it says, oh, hey, it's, 2 Thessalonians 1:4 or something. I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's where it is.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. What verse did he just quote?
My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. While you do that, I'm going to hit play. We have for $10 from Ben Alley 1998. Do you think they got the rock thing from the amino acids found in meteorites? And talking about the carboniferous bugs with Jackson and Brainbug right after this ends. So I don't know if that's where they got it. I think they just got it from Kent. I think Kent got it, and I think Matt got it from Kent. I think Kent got it because in textbooks, the Earth is usually described as a ball of rock. And so he thinks that therefore everything on the Earth at the time was a rock, and there was nothing else. Even though if I say when you say, hey, this is a ball of, it usually isn't completely exclusive. Like, right, if I say, hey, I have a clump of dirt, and you're like, well, actually, there are some parts of roots from a plant in there. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's great. I still have a lump primarily composed of dirt, you pedantic jerk.
Oh, I've got the verse, by the way.
Oh, what is it?
It's Hosea 4:6, and actually the context of this is very important, right? So it's, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. I was reading that in the KJV for our NIFB friends. The context there is that so the prophet Hosea was like, the charge, this was God talking to the people of Israel, right? You have forgotten the law.
Yeah.
So that knowledge it was speaking of is like, you have forgotten the laws of God.
Mm-hmm. Which is a common theme in the minor prophets. That's the Which, interesting note, the reason that the Tanakh in Jewish editions has a different number of books than the Old Testament in Christian Bibles, even ones without the Apocrypha, is that in the Tanakh, the minor prophets are grouped into one book.
Ooh, did you know that the book of Hosea was turned into reimagined as a really crappy romance novel called Redeeming Love?
I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me at all.
That I had to read in high school, and it was terrible, and I hated it.
Gross. I did not know that. That's my sincerest condolences. But here's the thing about crappy romance novels. They exist for everything. I'm aware of goblin-themed romance novels and dinosaur-themed romance novels.
There's coronavirus romance
Oh,
novels.
I've seen that too. Yeah.
Kiss the Coronavirus. I forget what it was.
Also, I don't recommend checking on this, but I was unfortunately informed by a friend who gave an example that there is Rule 34 material for coronavirus. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. They were like, "Hey, look at this. Rule 34 for coronavirus." I was like, "Thanks. I really needed that, buddy."
Is it Chuck Tingle? Is that the amazingly prolific romance writer that did the coronavirus one?
It might be. That sounds like an amazingly prolific romance author's name. But all right,
Okay.
we're getting far afield.
And so forth. But here's the thing, the Bible says my people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge. And I just want to say we live in an age of information. And if you have a phone, I encourage you to have it out for this whole thing, because we're going to be able to Google things.
Awesome. Do it, guys. Let's remember this for
Please do
next
that,
time.
team.
Let's
always remember to Google things.
Get your phones. Or if you're at a computer, just Google there. That's probably sufficient.
And Google and see how ridiculous evolution is. But let's start with the creation story. So I'll oblige the evolutionists here.
Oblige the evolutionists. Please do oblige us.
Please oblige.
First, they say that in the beginning, the entire universe was condensed down to an infinitesimal amount of space, smaller than a single proton. Everything you see in this room,
I think that was on their end. Sorry about that video glitch, guys.
Star, planet, galaxy, ocean. Just imagine.
Well, no, it's not like the stars and planets and galaxies were, as stars and galaxies and oceans, condensed into an infinitesimal point. It's that all of the energy that the universe has was condensed into an infinitesimal point. And right now, the idea of actually being compressed to a singularity is on the outs with cosmology. So that seems like it might not actually be the case, but it still would have been compressed to an extremely small space relative to, our current diffuse nature of the universe.
So, one, I reject. I don't think Matt knows what infinitesimal means in a mathematical sense.
Oh, no. You think he's even taken pre-calc?
Oh gosh, no. So I don't think when he's saying infinitesimal, he doesn't mean infinitesimal. He means really.
That could be, yeah. He might not realize the idea of infinitesimals and things like calculus.
I really don't think he knows what that is. Two, based off of other things I've watched, he also has no concept of what a nuclear reaction is. So he has no concept of matter, specifically mass energy exchange. So when he is thinking of this, he is trying to figure out how to squish matter down to something very small. So that he's like, there's a lack of understanding on so many levels here that it's hard to even have a discussion.
So doesn't he think the sun is a fire that's burning with different air in space?
Yes, he absolutely does. That was on Jackson's Week channel.
Okay.
He thinks the sun is undergoing
For those who don't
specifically combustion.
Right.
For those who don't know, that's not how that works.
The sun is not a big lump of coal.
It is not.
And the Venerable Bee, the Big Bang is having where the Big Bang is having actual science being done is primarily on the first few microseconds, right? After that, we have a pretty good handle. Basically, after the inflationary period, we have a pretty good handle on the early history of the universe. There's really not that much that's super mysterious and going to surprise us. But for those first few bits of time before, during and before the inflationary period, it's a pretty mysterious thing. And current thinking is that the singularity might not actually describe the earliest era of the universe. And I don't really have the time or even really the expertise to get into that right now. But what I would recommend is watch some stuff from PBS Spacetime and then take a look at maybe their sources and try to read some of those and whatnot. Although do be warned that this is not exactly easy material to get through. So apparently for $2 says, Dapper, you have committed heresy spelled incorrectly.
Was condensed down to an infinitesimal amount of space, smaller than a single proton. And then in a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second, it went from the size.
Let's start over, Steve. This is terrible.
What?
Steve?
Oh, he's still going. He's live right now.
People are not seeing what he's talking
I
about.
love Kent yelling at
They don't need to
Steve in
see
the
this live.
background. It's hilarious.
In the middle of its presentation, which he prepared
Right.
for by randomly talking about some Bible verses or something. Yeah.
Oh, so here's another thing I like. The
At least he wore a tie.
The reason that Kent has, in recent years, dived headfirst into crazy conspiracy nuttery is apparently because of Steve. Steve's apparently the one who's been feeding him these crazy conspiracies because, like, he's a QAnon guy and, like, he believes in chemtrails and he's an anti-vaxxer and whatnot. So apparently Steve has been, like, super feeding all this nonsense to Kent, which is why Kent has gotten even crazier in the past, like, 10 years.
One person who Kent can learn from, and he's just learned crazy stuff
from Steve. Now, to be fair, I don't have great evidence for this, but it is what I've heard from people who have been residents on Kent's compound.
Okay.
So people who used to live there are claiming that Steve is the one who feeds him the conspiracy craziness.
Oh no, I was about to feel bad for Steve.
No, don't feel bad for Steve.
Don't feel bad for Steve. Okay.
Steve is terrible.
Steve might be the ultimate troll on Kent, though. And if so, he's my hero.
Steve, if you were just trolling Kent, like, beautiful long day.
I wouldn't be surprised if Kent leaves his, like, estate to Steve, and Steve becomes the new Kent Hovind.
Oh no.
Well, you think he's going to leave it to Eric? No. I mean, maybe he'll leave something to his grandkids, but, like, what are his grandkids going to do with a cult compound in Alabama?
I don't know.
There's nothing you can do with it. It's worthless.
Drown in the lake?
Apparently the barn tour is really nice.
Good luck. All right. So, yeah. So, basically, you have God's word, which says that in the beginning God spake and it was. That's powerful. The Bible says that by the word of God the heavens were of old. But
I like that God speaks before there's anything for him to speak into, which means it has to be a metaphor. Like, it cannot literally be true that God speaks when it's physically impossible for sound to propagate. So this, if you want to take this as seriously as a thing that you're learning from, it cannot literally be the case that God is saying all of these things, especially at first. So there has to be something else going on. But creationists are just being like, nope, we're just gonna. Who cares?
Also, if you actually, like, read Genesis 1, right? There's already stuff there. There exists a ball of chaos that God, what God does is he
organizes,
he just organizes the chaos, right?
Which is interesting because today I was listening to some Christian apologists because every once in a while I listen to random crap, mostly because you never know when you're gonna find something that's like, oh, hey, this could be worth responding to, making content about. But he was complaining about the fact that in Mormon cosmology, God organizes chaotic matter to create the world. And it's like, dude, have you not read the Bible?
Read Genesis, my guy?
Like, I can understand your complaint that in the long run, Mormonism claims that matter is eternal, whereas the Bible doesn't explicitly make that claim. Okay, fair. But you can't complain about God organizing chaos to make the world because it's literally in the Bible. Like, it's right there. And the earth was formless. Why was it formless?
Wild and waste. It was wild and waste.
Yeah, so
that's my favorite poetic translation.
It was a very bizarre thing to see. Was a Christian apologist complaining about Mormons thinking that God organized chaos. It's like, well, buddy, I hate to break it to you, but
the evolutionists that say everything was crammed into a dot smaller than a period on a page, and in a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second, it went from the size of that tiny point to something billions of miles across. And so nothing can travel.
I mean, he's being very vague about, like, in how much time it was versus how big, and, like, I don't have the numbers in the back of my head. But, like, yes, the inflationary period, which was the first stage of the expansion of the universe, was extremely rapid. I don't know why that's a problem.
Oh, because I've actually watched to this part, and he's about to say something really dumb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Faster than the speed of light. Yeah, in a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second. You want me to believe that the universe went from smaller than a proton to something billions of miles across?
Because
that's trillions of times faster than the speed of light. Nothing can travel.
That moved.
Oh, yeah, because that's why he went with the speed of light.
Yep.
Okay, so
Matt thinks it's matter.
Now, Matt, I know Matt has been to my channel because he thanked me in my comments for re-uploading his ridiculous nonsense dinosaur evolution video.
Excellent.
He's like, thanks for sharing this. And I said, oh, you're very welcome.
Good sir. Yeah.
Which, by the way, that video is currently hidden as far as I know.
Mm.
Yeah, he's taken that
On
video
his channel?
on his channel. Yeah. So my channel might actually be the only place to watch it now. But by the way, if you do watch it, it does give money to Nintendo. Heads up. Because Matt used the Wii like character selection music for his video. And yeah, it immediately was copyright claimed. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to contest this because it's obviously a valid copyright claim.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm now sharing profits on my channel with Nintendo. So,
Hey, there you go.
it doesn't really bother me. It's just a weird little factoid. But, yeah, so it's not... The idea behind both inflation and the Big Bang in general and cosmic expansion is that space is moving. And essentially, you can think of it as like there's more space being generated between any 2 points of space that you can care to name, right? There's more space being generated, so they separate from each other. And there is no limit on how fast space itself can expand. Because space doesn't have mass, and it isn't even made up of the like various quantum entities that we think of as traveling through space. Space is the matrix on which this travel happens. And so we do know that there are places right now that their distance is increasing from us at a point where they're going to end up separating from us faster than the speed of light because the space is expanding that fast. And when that happens, they will leave what's called our cosmic horizon. They can no longer affect our part of the universe, and we can no longer affect theirs once that happens. And we're watching it happen with very distant objects right now. So we know in the future that objects we can currently detect will be outside of our cosmic horizon, which means that it's almost certainly the case that in the past, other objects were within our cosmic horizon, which are no longer within it. So, well, keep going with that.
So I'm just going to, for a second, Dapper, I'm gonna try to take what you just said and bring it to like maybe more like a high school level of understanding, right?
I'm really bad at that, aren't I?
Well, no, what you say is very precise and correct, which is awesome and incredibly useful, but also sometimes hard to understand. So,
real quick, we have a $10 super chat from Carrie Bronson who says, "Hi, sorry I'm late. Important void business. Have a little extra." Thank you, Carrie Bronson.
So, okay. So what I'm going to translate what you just said as, okay, there are matter. Mm-hmm. Anything that has mass cannot travel faster than the speed of light. And information can't travel faster than the speed of light. Right? So by information, I mean anything that we as humans are going to be able to perceive, because that's like electromagnetic radiation travels at the speed of light, exactly at it, never slower, never faster. But so anything that's not like, but the universe is bigger and stranger than matter and electromagnetic radiation. So the universe is free to expand and stretch, not limited by those rules. Another great thing is that, as far as we can tell, gravity affects things instantaneously, right? So there are things that we know of that are not limited by that speed of light rule. So I think that's my condensed soup version.
Okay. Well, we're going to watch a little bit more, and then we're going to call it for tonight. And here's the thing, though. For as long as we were responding to a video in which Maddie is name-dropped, Maddie is welcome on Kent with Bent, because she's basically the guest of honor, because she was name-dropped by Matt the Air in Space Powell. And by the way, guys, I am still under the impression that Matt Powell almost certainly has an inflatable banana in his yard that he calls Dr. Peel. Because, as we remember, Matt Powell is apparently very free with the appellation of doctor. He'll call Kent Hovind a doctor, he'll call Raw Matt a doctor, and he's called the illustrious Science Side Up Maddie a doctor.
One day, but today is not that day.
Well,
my dissertation is not written.
The thing is, creationism just has a separate dialect of English where the word doctor doesn't mean what it means in normal English.
It's a term that they use sometimes.
Yes. It's a general honorific because they think maybe you're smart or something.
It might mean something, it might not. They just say it sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna get a little bit more mad in, and then we're gonna get out of here.
Faster than the
All
speed of
right.
light. There's 326 million trillion gallons of water on Earth alone.
That's a weird way to measure it, but okay, I don't really care to dispute.
And so, who thinks that 326 million trillion gallons of water could be compressed down to an infinitesimal amount of space smaller than a single proton?
Okay, well, that's where we're gonna stop it. I'm gonna take a drink because that was stupid. We're gonna explain it, and then we're gonna get out of here.
Oh my goodness.
No one thinks that it was water that was compressed
thinks
in the
that.
Big Bang. It was just
Honey.
energy. Then eventually, this energy starts to become diffuse enough that the energy density is low enough. Essentially, you can think of it as sort of like the temperature gets low enough that the first protons and neutrons and electrons can start to essentially kind of condense out of this energy. And then they form the first bits of hydrogen primarily, with a bit of helium here and there, and traces of like lithium and maybe beryllium in tiniest.
Not out of the Big Bang.
Maybe not even lithium.
No, you
Oh, you
need
go.
a star. You need a star to get anything above helium. You
Helium.
almost need a star to get anything above hydrogen. Hydrogen is going to be 99.9
There
of
you
what
go.
you get.
So
Yeah.
then when this hydrogen starts to condense into stars, then we start getting things like oxygen that can combine with the hydrogen to later make water. Water did not exist at all for a very long time in the universe.
Billions of years, like whole stars had to live and die before we could have water.
Yeah, those pop zero stars, yeah, they had to basically all go away before we even got the first water molecule in the entire universe. And for $5, One for Null says, there are instances of electromagnetic radiation that act like physical molecules. Hard light can be slower than the speed of light. So it is possible to slow light down on average. The wavefront velocity, though, or what was it? There's like 3 different velocities associated with light, and I can't remember which one of it is. But basically, you can think of it as like the point-to-point speed of photons is always light. But because of various scattering events and whatnot, the propagation of essentially like transmitted light beam can be slowed in a medium.
Yeah. So what I was saying earlier is light always travels at the speed of light, never faster, never slower. Team, I'm specifically referring to the speed of light in a vacuum is a universal constant.
Yeah.
You can do very, very clever physics things to manipulate that, but you're not changing the speed of light. That's and I was just kind of
I like to think
saying that in a simplified form.
I like to think of the speed of light in a vacuum as actually the speed of causality. Because if you allow things to violate it, then you get causality like problems and you get paradoxes.
Yeah.
So
There's a really good PBS Spacetime video that's basically titled that.
yeah,
Ooh.
I think it's called "The Speed of Light is Not About Light."
Yeah.
So check that out, guys. But anyway, we're gonna start wrapping it up. So, Maddie, what do you have for us? What do you got going on your channel, Science Side Up?
Woot. Okay, so guys, I'm doing a series right now. That's Weather 101. So it's short videos addressing specific topics that would be like I often teach intro to weather classes. So I'm trying to kind of put those out on the internet, but in a, you guys don't want to hear me lecture for an hour, right? So I'm making that in much more bite-sized pieces.
You might be surprised though.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I could lecture for an hour. But right now I'm trying to do weather concepts in bite-sized pieces. So those come out every Thursday and Sunday. Tomorrow night you can catch a live stream. I think I'm going to do another Reddit deep dive tomorrow. We debunk pseudoscience on Wednesday nights over on Science Side Up. And most importantly, if you want to see me hang out with Dapper and Bent, but when they're not Dapper and Bent, when they're Milo Tea Leaf and the dwarf Voldrun, nailed it, you can watch me DM Guns, Magic, and Steel every other Monday over on Fire Vic's channel.
Drink for Godzilla.
Drink for Godzilla. So I do things on the internet.
Yeah, Maddie is she's fairly prolific. Also, you did a D&D climate analysis. That was a lot of fun. I had a blast with that.
I didn't do that. I did a climate analysis of the Forgotten Realms.
I can't wait for the next one. because it was amazingly fun because it got to combine my interest in science and my interest in D&D into one absurdly nerdy video. And oh my goodness, let's just say this. It's the most fun I've had watching a live stream in a good while. I have fun with a lot of live streams, but that one was just perfect for me. And I recognize that I'm a weirdo, but still.
No, I'm gonna do another fantasy climate here pretty soon. I don't
Awesome.
know. I think I'll do a pseudoscience debunk first.
And every once in a while, I also show up on the pseudoscience debunk videos because
You do.
I usually have some free time around that time. So sometimes I'll hop in if Maddie deigns to provide me with the link.
Yeah, yeah. I often have surprise Wednesday co-hosts,
Right.
which Dapper often fills.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I'm here to help. But Bent, do you have anything to plug before we get out of here?
No,
Okay.
nothing.
Well, I'll give some channel news. So let's see. Thursday is going to be the next Speculative Evolution video. I'm sorry that it has taken a while. It's been over a month. The only excuse I have is that resetting my computer, losing basically 3 days worth of work, just completely killed any sense of momentum that I have. But the next one is coming out on Thursday. It's going to be just over an hour. It's an hour and 4 seconds and some change. So bring a drink, bring a snack. It's going to be a long one. That's primarily because the person who made two of the entries for the Speculative Evolution project went on deep dives for his entries. So it's quite a thing. It's an interesting one. Let's see. Then Saturday. So this Saturday and next Saturday are going to be more bits about spirit science. I have found a new video that we're going to take a look at. It's about the physics of light. I've asked Bent Hovind if he's interested because that is something that he likes to talk about, and so he may or may not be on. I think currently the plan is probably yes, but we'll have to see. No promises. But then the Saturday after that, I want to say that I am planning on having Sal Cordova on because he is going to debunk the use of the second law of thermodynamics as an argument against evolution. Because he and I agree very much so on why that is a dumb argument. So
Such a dumb argument.
So he and I, because he knows enough about thermodynamics to be a young Earth creationist who is like, guys, this is a stupid argument. Please stop.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have him on to talk about that. That's because recently I was on his channel where we went over early Christian history, specifically the period of the Apostolic Fathers. So that
was a great stream, by the way.
I had a lot of fun. And I also got to tell some of Sal's audience that no, I do not take the stupidest possible version of the atheist take on Christian history, which is what they all assumed that I did. But anyway, that's it for us, guys. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you know when there's more Dapper Dino. And I'm going to say goodbye and hit the end credits scene. So goodbye, everybody. I just want to take a second to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 and above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, Patrick Dennis, and Res Instance. My channel members and patrons help make this channel possible, and without their support, this channel really wouldn't exist. If you would like to help support the channel as a member or patron, there are links in the description to both join the channel as well as join the Patreon. Patrons and members get mentioned in these credit scenes, as well as getting early access to my scripted videos, and if you pledge $10 or above, you can also get access to various 3D assets that I create for Blender, both for use in the channel, as well as just general giveaways to my supporters to help in any Blender projects they might have. If a monthly or annual pledge isn't for you, then there is also a merch store linked to the description, and if none of that's right for you, please just like and subscribe because every